All right, so let's go and think about the National Institutes of Health. This is the big funder for sponsored research, and knowing NIH is going to be critical to managing sponsored awards. Not only does NIH have all of these policies, but many smaller funders use what's called flow down requirements. They'll say our requirements are NIH flow down, and what that means is whatever NIH says, we are also doing. So these are really important things to know. So this is what we're gonna do is go through the kinds of resources that exist online about NIH. So the first thing that you want to know about NIH is that it is the largest biomedical research agency in the world, and it's split into 27 institutes and centers, and they're organized by disease focus. So you can see the list of NIH institutes and centers here: Cancer Institute, Eye Institute, Heart, Lung, and Blood, and so on. So you can read about them, when were they founded, and each one of these issues those funding announcements that we were talking about. So the types of grant programs, NIH uses activity codes, R01, P01, et cetera, to differentiate their research-related programs. And NIH institutes and centers may vary in the way they use the activity codes. And that means not all institutes and centers accept applications for the same types of grants. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the common types of grant programs. There are, of course, many types, but we will go over some of the big ones here. The most common type is the R01. That's a research project grant. It's to support a specified and circumscribed research project. The most commonly used grant program, generally awarded for 3 to 5 years. And this is one that's utilized by all institutes and centers. And then you see this word here, parent funding opportunity announcement. The parent is really the standard issue NIH template funding opportunity that you're going to see. So you've got your specialized RFAs and you've got your parent announcements. So you can see here, when you go to a funding opportunity announcement, it's going to tell you right at the top who are the participating organizations. And I want to point this out because you can see that everybody's listed here, including, I want to point out National Cancer Institute, because there is another type of funding announcement, which we'll talk about in a minute, R21. So if you actually go to the NIH R21 parent announcement, you will see that not all of those same funding institutes are listed. See how this is a much shorter list? So again, we've got a parent announcement, but it's not everybody. So sometimes your investigator will come to you and say, oh, I'm going to submit R21 to the parent announcement through the NCI. And so you want to take just a minute and say NIH NCI R21 announcement. Then you can just use Google to find this information. Check it out. They've got a separate one. It's not a parent, it's a PAR 2292. The only component, the only participating institute is the National Cancer Institute. So they've got their own special one. So these are just some of the things you're going to want to think about. Why does it matter to know about the institutes and centers? This is one of the reasons. So getting back now to, we were talking about the kinds of funding mechanisms. So let me back out of here. Here we go. We have, in addition to the R01, we have the R03 small grant program, which is just a very short period of time, maybe 2 years of funding to kind of get pilot or feasibility studies off the ground. Another type that you'll see very commonly is the R21 that I was just talking about. That's exploratory and developmental research projects. More money than the R03. Instead of $50,000, it's $275,000, and usually for 2 years. Then you've got some other unusual flavors of Rs that you can read about later. Now we get down to the U01. This is the cooperative agreement we were talking about, and that's to projects to be performed by the investigator, but when there's substantial programmatic involvement anticipated between the awarding institute and centers. So there are lots of other variations of U awards, which are multi-project, U10s, U54s, U19s, lots of different cooperative agreement types. The U01 is the main one. And then you can see here, there's a K99 ROO. This is a transitional pathway to independence award. There are a lot of K awards for younger investigators, postdocs with different research focus. And then when NIH is trying to transition them to getting their first R mechanism, they actually have this transitional funding opportunity, which is to start out with a career award, and then halfway through it transitions into a research award. Then you've got your big programmatic grants. These are the ones that have integrated multi-project structures. So you might have 4 projects and 3 cores. So each project is like its own R01. And then you have 3 cores that together support the work of the 4 projects. So the PO one is the one where you have one overall PI, or maybe a multi-PI, where maybe 2 investigators are leading it. And then you've got your really big ones. These are your center core grants, your P30s, and your specialized centers, which are P50s. So your cancer center support grants, your Alzheimer's disease research centers. And these can be many, many more than just 4 projects. As they say here, the spectrum of activities comprises multidisciplinary attack. So this is pretty exciting and complicated grants. There are also the training mechanisms. We'll talk about those later. The F awards are fellowships. They're awarded to individual students or postdocs. The T awards are institutional training grants. That means that they're issued to the institution with a certain number of slots, and then the institution chooses the student. Whereas the F awards are when the student themselves are funded. So those are some of the grant types. So how do we apply for funding at NIH? Well, there's a guide on how to do that. It's the SF 424. This is the gold standard. These are the instructions for how to prepare a proposal. Every question that you can have is going to be answered in these documents. So the general instructions, this is the comprehensive guidance. It's going to have every possible, the R's, the T's, the F's, the K's, everything is here. But I find it's really useful to use the filtered application instructions. So the research instructions, if you're doing our mechanism proposal, you can just click on here and you'll get the PDF, and it's gonna, bring up just for our awards, research instructions. And then the same if you're doing a career award, a training grant, et cetera. It's just filtering it down for you. And so the one thing I want to point out is we looked at those funding opportunity announcements. Note that although the SF 424 is the general guidelines, you should always read the specific funding opportunity announcement for anything that's specific to that proposal. And if the funding opportunity announcement contradicts the general guidelines, always use the funding opportunity announcement. It's only if the FOA is not addressing a particular section, you just fall back to the general guidelines. And then how do we actually prepare an NIH proposal? We use their system called Assist. And there is lots of details about how to get in here, what you put in here. This is, you download the funding opportunity announcement into Assist, and then you begin to modify it, upload documents, enter administrative and budget, administrative information. RMG enters the budget themselves. Then the grants policy statement. Once the grant is awarded, we are expected in that notice of award, once we receive that notice of award, we are agreeing to all the terms that are in the NIH grants policy statement. And this is, as you can imagine, a pretty big document. This is the terms and conditions, administrative requirements, financial requirements, and special conditions. I definitely urge you to begin to feel comfortable navigating this document. It's all the information of what's in here. It's down on the side. You can search here. I find going straight to the source to get an answer is reassuring for me and for faculty. I would say the place that I visit the most is NIH grants policy statement, selected items of cost. And this comes up when I get a requisition to buy something on a grant. And I don't know, maybe I don't know in that particular case, whether it's allowable or not. So this is really cool because it's a big, giant chart. So everything I need to know in here, alcoholic beverages, never allowable, ever, ever. Animals allowable, books and journals allowable. You can find pretty much anything that you need to know about whether or not it's going to be okay to spend here. The other thing that you can do, another place I go a lot in the NIH grants policy statement is institutional training grants, just because they are so specific. There are so many requirements around application requirements are here in terms of what kinds of pay they can have, recruitment plans, receipt dates, allowable and unallowable costs just for training grants. There's a lot of information here. So definitely feel totally comfortable digging down into this NIH grants policy statement. You're going to get a lot of really useful guidance in here. Sometimes in terms of the grant process overview, sometimes I'll have a PI ask me, so I submitted this a few months ago and I submitted my proposal and I'd like to know kind of what happens next. So the grants process flow is posted on their website, talking about applying, writing, submitting, receipt and referral. The first step in the process for them is the peer review, and they'll actually get a score and it'll have a summary statement on it. But then it's a few more months before the decision about whether or not to fund it happens. And that occurs in what's called the council review. And so sometimes they'll say, well, I got my score, now what? Well, you can go out there and kind of get a general sense of where they are in the process. The other thing I would point out is NIH standard due dates will also give you some guidance on exactly how to find out where you are in the process. So you can see for each activity code, we talked about the P series, the T's, the D's, the R01 news, all of these have cycle 1, 2, and 3 due dates. And so once you've selected, so right now we're all working on our cycle 1 applications. So like for our R01s, our new ones, our first cycle, February 5th is our first due date. And if you scroll down to the bottom, then you can see the review and award cycles. So for cycle 1, all our due dates are going to fall between these dates. The scientific merit, that's where there's the peer review, the discussion, the scoring, all that will happen in June and July. And then the advisory council is going to make the funding decisions between August and October. And the earliest project start date for the August ones is September, and for the October ones would be December. So that's how you can help your PI understand kind of where they are in the review and funding process. Now I want to show you too a searchable database called NIH Reporter. This is really, really useful website for finding out information, especially as I mentioned earlier, when you don't have access to the investigator's portfolio in the internal Stanford systems. So maybe I can put in one. This is an investigator who is in Department of Medicine, Primary Care Population Health, BJ Pericoil. So I can just put in her last name and here are all her grants. Here's every NIH funded grant that she has. I can click through on her R01. One pretty nifty thing is I can see the description of it. This is her abstract that appeared in her proposal. Here's the public health relevance statement. This is for a lay audience like us. What is she actually studying? All her specific aims are here. And then I can find out lots of details, like here's her, she's the PI. I can see here other PI information not applicable. So there's no other PI, it's just her. What was the funding opportunity announcement she applied for? What is the institute that funded her? It's right here. What are the full project date range for this entire award? September 2018 to May 2024. And then what budget year are we in now? We're in this budget year between 2019 and 2021. So you can also find out the program official. Sometimes your PI will ask you, who's my program official for that award again? You can find it on the notice of award. You can also find it here. Another thing I find really useful is, say my PI has a subaward, he has a subaward for another institution, and maybe the subaward isn't coming for whatever reason. And I want to know, what's the cause? Is it because the prime site didn't get their notice of award? And so now they don't want to give us money because they don't have it themselves, or do they have it and then some kind of an internal problem, right? So I'm gonna put one in here and show you an example of that. You can see this just basically to show you that you can see it for any institution. So this person's in Baylor College of Medicine. My PI has a subaward on this grant. This grant was successfully funded. I can see it here. I can see that it's active right now. So I can then go and advocate for my PI accordingly. That his collaborator has the money, so we need to be getting ours. So that's a couple of ways that I use that database. I'm sure there are many others that you can use. You can search by funding mechanism. You can search by institution. There's lots of ways to do it. One other place I want to show you guys about NIH is the Quick Queries website. This is a database that allows you to search for some pretty cool pieces of information. What you need to have first is your own institution's IPF number. You can search for any one you want. Of course, I'm going to search for Stanford here. And then our IPF code just pops up at the bottom. And so if you go back to the Quick Queries page, maybe I want to know, did my PI get the notice of award and maybe RMG just hasn't told me yet? I can run a query And I can see every grant that's been issued to Stanford in the past 7 days. Now, it's not a lot because we've been on the holidays. So let me open up that date range to 60 days. This is everything that's come to Stanford from NIH in the last 60 days. It'll tell you if it's new or revised. And it'll tell you what the issue date was, who's the PI. Another thing that you can find in here is, when do I have progress reports due? Maybe I can't see that in Sarah, so I go into here. Here's everybody at Stanford who has a progress report due, and this means last year. So this is the last year of the grant. It'll be starred here. It'll tell you what the due date is, what the grant is, the PI name. So lots of information here to kind of get you started on researching an issue that you might be having. So those are some of the NIH resources I wanted to share with you guys. So the other thing I wanted to talk to you about NIH is the serial number. You can learn a lot about a grant just from its serial number. And so back in the before times when I had a cubicle, I had this document hanging in my cubicle. I haven't seen it in a year, but I know it's still there. When you are looking at the serial number, the first thing you want to look at is the first number is the application type. Brand new award will have a 1. You can see that this described here. What you see most often is 5. Non-competing continuation. What that means is most grants are given for a couple of years, up to 5 years, and R01 will be for 5 years. So the first year is new, and then every year after that is a non-competing continuation. So you'll get a 1 and you'll get a 5, 5, 5, 5. Activity code, we talked about these. The R01, is it an R01, a P01, a KH24? The institute code is gonna be explained over here. The funding institutes, the acronyms are over here. So CA is cancer. You can see National Cancer Institute is CA. So I know that it was Cancer Institute funding. Serial number unique to that grant. And so even if the grant changes institutes or changes activity codes, it's still gonna always keep that serial number. The support year, obvious, is it year 1, is it year 9, whatever. And then the other information is going to be, the suffix is going to be the A1. The suffixes are defined down here at the bottom. A1 means it was a resubmission. So your PI submitted, got a good score, but didn't get funded. And so resubmitted, revised, resubmitted, got it funded on the second time. It's going to have that A1 suffix at the end of it. And then if it had a supplement funding associated with it, it's going to have an S. So the first supplement will be S1, the second supplement will be S2, and so on. Okay.